Okay, so here we have a lab environment, which is a Kubernetes environment that we're going to install Portworx 2.6 onto. In this lab environment, we want to make sure Portworx is not installed currently. As we can see, the environment that Kubernetes is running is currently cleaning up an old Portworx installation for us to install on. Here you can see there are no Kubernetes Portworx installations found, so we can go ahead and continue. Now we're going to take a look at the Kubernetes environment we'll be working with. This question is, how many master nodes are in the cluster? We can get the nodes in the cluster and see that there is one master node. Now, what version of Kubernetes are we running here? 1.18. Where is the Kube API server running? Here we can see it's on running 6443. We want to know if there's any pods in the default namespace. Currently there are none. We want to see if there is a Kube DNS deployment running. Here we can see core DNS running, and there's two of them. So we can select core DNS and 2. Now we're going to install Portworx. So now that we have a good idea of what Kubernetes environment we're working with, now we're going to install Portworx. As a recap, Portworx needs a few things to be installed onto Kubernetes. The first is drives. We need to be able to install Portworx using some type of block device on the worker nodes. If we connect to one of our nodes here and issue an lsblk command, we can see there are a number of different disks we can use. We're going to use VDB since we know it is available and free. The next thing Portworx needs is a key value database. Usually this is etcd, and if we're deploying Portworx in a small lab or POC scenario, such as this lab, we can use a built-in Portworx key value database instead of deploying etcd outside of the cluster. In our URL that we'll install using the specification, the built-in KVDB is used. Here is the installation URL. If you want, you can copy this installation URL and paste it in a web browser to see exactly what it's doing. We can scroll down to the Portworx daemon set and look at the arguments it's using. Here we can see that the name is mypxcluster. We're using dev VDB, Kubernetes secret type, the built-in key value database, and that we're using Kubernetes. The nice part is we can actually install using this by just issuing kubectl apply and then the URL. Once that is applied, you see everything that is being deployed to the cluster, and we can watch the kube system namespace for the Portworx containers to become running and ready. This may take a little bit of time, but be patient and the containers will be created and running, and you will know they're ready when it says 1/1 and running. Here we can see it took about 3 minutes for one of the Portworx nodes to become ready and running. The other two Portworx nodes should shortly follow. Here we can see the second one now ready. And the third one should become ready any moment. There we go. Now all three Portworx nodes are running. What we can do is now SSH back into one of our nodes and issue a pixie-cutl status command. Here you can see the output of our Portworx cluster. That Portworx is operational, and there are 1, 2, 3 nodes in our cluster using dev VDB. We can look at the logs from the master node. This has all the Portworx logs ending in the Portworx service being healthy. Now we can continue. As we saw before in our output, we can SSH to one of our nodes, issue the pixie-cuddle status command to get some information. Here we can see how many storage nodes do you see in the Portworx cluster. There are 1, 2, 3. What version of Portworx is installed? Here we can see it's version 2.6.5.0, so 2.6, and the cluster name, which is the cluster ID of my PX cluster. At this point, you've now installed Portworx on a Kubernetes lab environment with dev VDB devices as its backing store, and you are ready to go. Let's see if these answers were correct. And you're done. That is installing Portworx 2.6 on Kubernetes.